Hello, so in this video I will show how to transfer ArchiCAD model to Revit. So first we will see two typical workflow when we export IFC from ArchiCAD and just link or import in Revit, and later I will show improved workflow which can improve modeling efficiency in Revit application. So first I have basic ArchiCAD model which has basic elements. So I have columns which are structure bearing elements. If I select and check the properties, so I will go to classification. So from here I can see classification system shows its column construction elements. So classification schema looks similar to IFC classification. If I hide the wall, and I select a beam, and also I have similar information if I go to classification. So in this case it's beam, joist, and this classification system will be converted to IFC classification. And structure function, load bearing element, and also the layer is also structure bearing element. Similar setup is done for the floors and for some walls. Also I created some openings. I have a couple of windows, doors, and just basic openings in my facade wall. And facade wall is also bearing element. If I go to layers, so the layer is structure bearing, and classification is also construction element, walls, and also I can select wall type. Let's choose solid wall, choose, and load bearing element, and position is exterior. So I click OK. Also I have stairs, I have concrete beam and column, also steel beam and column, floors made of concrete, and floors made of couple of layers, walls made of one layer, and walls made of couple of layers, and also railings, the roof, outside components, so roof element, some road segment. Here I have some sand, and here I have gravel, and this is soil. And additional trees. So to export all this data I use Save As, and just go and select IFC export option and export using all presets. So I export geometry, general parametric, export EFC4, design transfer, reference view based export. Also I use Revit export for reference model, Revit MEP export, Revit structure export, and additional option I select directly Revit export and export model also in Revit format directly from ArchiCAD program. additional options and setup of these exports, I can check here. IFC translators, I think. Yes, so I have translator for import and translator for export. So here I can see all presets of these specific typical export options inside ArchiCAD. So basically, exact geometry export uses EFC2 X3 version of EFC, and design transfer uses EFC4, and reference also EFC4, and additional presets are provided here. So I didn't change anything, it's fresh installed ArchiCAD without any modifications, everything is out of the box. So after I exported all the files, I have all these EFC files here. So here we can see larger ones represent EFC2 X3 format, and I think smaller ones represent EFC4. So it's more optimized version of EFC files, and additional one, direct export in Revit format, Revit project file. So it's the largest one comparing with all other versions. Now let's jump inside Revit application. First, let's jump in Revit 2025, and in this application and this version I used this EFC Exchange add-in, which is designed by Graphisoft especially for importing or linking EFC files into Revit. So here you have two options: improved EFC import and just basic link of EFC file. So in here what we see is done using improved EFC import. So here we can see we don't see the soil, other elements are visible, and we have large area of our project. Internal origin and survey point is located here. And now if I select any element, I see its model in place, and if I select model in place element, I get basic element, edit extrusion, so it's extruded model in place elements. The same is for the walls, edit in place, and I have extruded model in place elements. And for the column, so the column is structure column, and it's family based element, so we can see it's treated like family. But inside Revit I think it should work like column. Can I replace it with another column? Okay, so it looks like column is working. So this one is structure column and this one is basic column. So it's not structure column, so it's edit in place option. And now let's go inside and let's see. Steers model in place element, and this column is also structure column. So basically I should be able to replace it with native Revit column, And this one is structure framing element, but it's edit in place. And this beam is like a family object, so practically it should be able to change it. And this wall is nice, and openings are correctly created. So here we have an option of elements modeled in place, and all the layers of layered element like roof is also created as separate model in place parts. Okay, so now let's jump inside main model, in which I place all these different options. So let's analyze what we have here. Exact geometry export, so we have this option. No soil around the building, and if I bind this object, I have model which is made from direct shapes, and practically I cannot edit or do any modifications for these elements because these are direct shape objects. For the column is also direct shape column, and in this case, yeah, replacing or switching information is not possible. Inside also everything is made from direct shapes. So I just use insert link IFC and linked this one and later bind it. Next one is general parametric export. So here we have all the components. So I see the soil also imported, and if we check objects are direct shapes. And also we have additional typical export element for IFC openings. And now if I try to bind this one, let's select all the parts. Okay, and now let's edit this one. So I have direct shapes and walls are in strange shapes, so the cut is not straight, it's meter cut, and as extra objects I have these generic elements. And if I want to modify, I cannot do anything, any modifications. So everything is in direct shape. And also the soil was lost in this option. Let's expand and activate all components. Yeah, so I have a strange object here. Parts is outside the building. Next one, so this one is EFC4 design transfer option. So design transfer option, I see all the elements similar like in this option, and let's bind this in the model. And now I see some strange things happening. So the floor get out of the building and is now outside of the building. Also, this wall have now strange shapes, so it means conversion was not made correctly, and I have wrong shape of my wall direct shape, and also the floor is made outside. And if I hide other components looks like they are in correct position. This wall is wrong height. It should be like this one, so it means during conversion process it was replaced with the same family like this one. So this quality is not good, and it can lead to some issues and problems. Let's look to another option. So here we have option of reference EFC4. So soil is not exported. If I select elements, they are direct shape elements. And if I click bind, I have the same problem. So it means conversion of EFC4 format, which was made from ArchiCAD, is in bad shape and can lead to wrong design. And please be careful using this option. Next one, Revit export for reference. So this one looks similar like formats before, also made of direct shapes. And let's bind it. So have the same problem as before, so it means it looks like it's EFC4 and here I have the parts of the roof. And my wall's top orientation is created not correctly, and also I see some openings, so it means it just copied the first floor and just moved it as a copy to the second floor. This wall is created correctly. This one is made from a couple of elements. So the issue is like this one. I see the window openings here, so it means some kind of strange things happening here. Okay, let's see what happens if I use a Revit export for reference and I use ArchiCAD link. So I just used this option. Link EFC. So not improved IFC import, but link IFC. So with this one, I see elements geometry is correct. They didn't move to different positions. I have parts, geometry, and openings are correct. So of course everything is in direct shapes. So this option looks much better comparing to direct import in Revit. Next one is improved option, which creates large zone here, and if I convert this improved version inside my model, so now instead of direct shape I have this elements model in place like I showed before, and somehow one of the walls disappeared and just opening is here. So also I don't have windows, just openings, and also the doors disappeared in this version. If I go back here, so in here I have the doors, I have the wall here also, and I have the windows. So if I link the model and I bind it to my project, so now instead of direct shape I have this elements model in place like I showed before, and somehow one of the walls disappeared and just opening is here. So also I don't have windows, just openings, and also the doors disappeared in this version. If I go back here, so in here I have the doors, I have the wall here also, and I have the windows. So if I link the model and I bind it to my project, some objects disappeared and yeah, information was lost. Also, you should pay attention if you do such workflow. Now let's look at Revit MEP export. So we have also direct shapes and roof, wall, direct shapes, and so on. And if I click bind, also model is damaged and was not converted correctly inside Revit. Next one is Revit structure export. So I have all these opening elements here, and if I bind it, so before binding I can go to level 0 and check how these walls or elements looks like. So here I have nice perpendicular cuts of these walls. So after conversion, all the walls are nicely perpendicular, and in the link I have walls like this one. not perpendicular. And if I bind it, so it automatically change wall types and the shape and geometry of the walls, and creates these errors here. So this option is not very nice. And the last one is Revit project file. So this one was exported as Revit file directly from ArchiCAD, and if I click bind, so all objects are in their location, the side elements are in their location, so everything looks nice. And if I ungroup it, so of course I have direct shape, generic object, I have direct shape of the roof, all geometry is precise and exact. Beams are direct shapes, and of course I cannot change it to different elements. So from all these options and versions, the best one to transfer information from ArchiCAD is using ArchiCAD option to save file as Revit project file. Other options can create additional issues and problems. As reference files, they work fine. You can add it and you can compare with your models, but if you want to snap and do additional edits or place your modeling elements, or you want to filter some parts, so this option is the best one. So use Revit project file export. So here I click Save As and select Revit, and in options I see latest available version, Revit 25, previous one 24. I can choose by project working units, so of course meters should be used in Europe, and export properties and classification as properties, all relevant properties and classifications. Keep hierarchy of beams, columns, curtain walls, railings, and stair elements. So I didn't check this one. As I mentioned, I just used all default settings, so additional modifications can be done here. And let's jump to the next workflow, and we will see how this workflow can improve your efficiency and modeling of architecture inside Revit. Okay, let's continue with another workflow in which I will transform this ArchiCAD model into a Revit editable model. So for this task I will use typical export of IFC file from ArchiCAD, which are located here, and no additional modifications or changes. I will just use one of typical export file types here. So for this workflow, we will implement additional tool, which is called Autodesk Advance Steel. I just use new project from typical template, no modifications, no extra stuff, just typical setup of the programs. Now I will go to exports and imports and select import IFC file. So this program supports EFC to X3 format. So for that one, I will use Revit export for reference. Let's open. In this menu, I will select General. In here, I don't have ArchiCAD, so I will choose General. And if nothing happens, it means this option is not working. So let's choose another one. General parametric export. Let's try this one. Yeah, so if after selecting file, this menu pops up, it means you need to map the profiles and the materials. So in here, following materials isn't in conversion file, so I need concrete structure. Structure concrete. So from here I will choose material from the list of materials inside Advance Steel. The downside is what Autodesk platform is not using same materials in all the products, in Inventor, Advance Steel, in Civil 3D, in Revit, and so on. So it's a big disadvantage because we have one developer, and in each application and program we have different names, different material setups, and so on. So it would be very useful if all the programs speak the same language and use the same materials. So let's just select one of concrete classes, C2530, for the structure concrete. Reinforced concrete, I will use the same. So in ArchiCAD we have concrete and reinforced concrete, so like two different materials. Gypsum plasterboards, and regarding gypsum plasterboards, it's a little bit complicated because I don't have such material here, because this program is dedicated more for steel constructions, and it has some concrete materials and also wood materials. So instead of gypsum, I can try to select fiberglass, or maybe any other material which is not concrete. So later inside Revit I can switch this material back to the material I would like to use for the gypsum plasterboards, but I need to write it down so I remember which material I chose regarding this one. So let's, I don't know, fiberglass. Bricks. So for the bricks also we don't have bricks here, so instead of bricks I use wood, just simple concrete, maybe just concrete. Okay. And generic internal cladding. So for this one I will use maybe some kind of wood material, wood. External cladding. So for external cladding I will use solid wood S10. Timber floor. For timber floor let's use oak. And downside here, you cannot use search as easy option to search all these materials, so you need to go in this list and move around, and it's also not so user friendly. Autodesk could improve this, but I think they will just kill this Advance Steel and integrate all the functions inside Revit, and almost several years they have this platform and practically nothing is changing here, so it's just one of the platforms. Okay, so now from here we can see what we got. We got all the walls, we got the columns here, also I see the beam located here. I don't see steel beam, which should be in this location. I see openings which are correctly created according to the ArchiCAD model, and the roof is not transformed, so maybe instead of roof I should use different object like floors, something like that. And all the floors are moved down, so it's also not correct representation of the floors, so it means floors are not in correct elevation. All the floors should go up till the top of here. So we have some geometrical issues here, so it means I can fix them here by moving elements to the needed position. So this problem is basically dedicated and linked with the floor. Okay, so I will not choose or modify anything here, so this application is just one step in transformation. So now let's use export for the Revit. I click export, and of course before export I need to save it and export. Okay, let's save the model, and now let's jump in Revit, and inside Revit I will need to use extension for the Advance Steel. I click import. After selecting this option, this window pops up, Advance Import. From here I need to select what country library I will use for my project. So in this case, let's use maybe Germany. It's more European. And let's click import. And select this file. So here we need to do the mapping, the same mapping like we did in Advanced Steel. Now I need to map objects to represent it inside Revit. So to transform walls, floors, beams, columns, I need to have all the library elements loaded in my library. Now I have the beam, which is here 100. Inside Revit I don't have this one, so I need to load family, and I need here so let's select this one and I click OK, and from here I select needed profile. Let's click OK. And here I go. I have all the elements inside Revit application, and all these elements are editable basic Revit family objects. If I go to level 0, so comparing with the best option which I spoke earlier, which we have direct shapes created model in place objects, and now I have true Revit families which I can just change to a needed option. So I can choose basic concrete walls from my library, and all the walls are recognized, and I can replace it with all the needed elements, and I can say select all entire project, and I just select needed option. For example, this one. And if I go to 3D model, here I go here, and I see all my walls are changed, and they have nice representation. Openings are clear. If I double click, so I have a wall, and the openings are as separate rectangle straight wall openings as usual from architecture opening section. So these are openings created like that. And for the floors, the same situation. I can select needed floor option, and if I double click, I have real Revit floors, not direct shapes, not model in place elements, real elements of Revit. Of course, it doesn't bring the type of families from ArchiCAD, and for full transformation I would need to have the same families and the same objects, but in this option, so all things are editable and modeling time is saved. Practically you don't need to do any modeling, just have all the elements here. Of course you need to fix these floor locations because they are in wrong position. So I think if I put 0 here, it jumps inside correct location. And the same here. And now let's jump inside and see how beams and columns look like here. So I have concrete rectangle framing, so it should be the column. Column is not recognized as column, so it's a beam, and this one is also beam element, and this one is also concrete beam element. So in Advanced Steel we didn't saw any representation of this one element, but after I transformed it back to this application, I see all the elements here. And if I type here, I can change parameters, and so my wall has all the needed configuration. So remember, I chose fiberglass, so instead of this one I can just select visible and choose needed wall type. So for structural engineers, converting all architecture model into editable structure model with exact geometry, except the floors, which should be fixed a little bit, but in this case all the openings are here, all the walls and floors are here. So this is one of the best transformations comparing to any other tools or third-party applications which is used to convert ArchiCAD model to Revit model. Okay, so in conclusion, if you are BIM manager, please put inside BIM execution plan tips how to transform ArchiCAD model to Revit models if in the project teams will work with ArchiCAD and Revit. For coordination purpose, of course, use the latest IFC file, which you can use for clash control and so on. But for collaboration between different teams, as basic option, ArchiCAD architects should export in Revit format, and structural engineer or other engineers should get model looking like this, so they can open it inside Revit. And as additional option, specific EFC file should be provided for engineers, so they can convert this model to editable Revit shapes, and they can continue on working. And by implementing this workflow, engineers can save, I don't know, maybe half of time for modeling and editing elements. So this workflow is very efficient. Of course, not all elements are exported, so I don't have any soil and any other around objects, but practically all the floors and walls are exported nicely. As additional option, if I would like to get full transformation and get the full result like I have here, so it means I need to do some specific modifications inside classification of ArchiCAD model. So it means all the terrain elements should be converted to classification of the floors. So the program will recognize the geometry and it can be transformed into floor elements. And the roof also should be transformed using floor elements, and Advanced Steel will also recognize the roof and it will create nice roof object. And in here you can see this plate, which represents a modification of steel elements. So it means after Advanced Steel, it uses these components, modifiers, and it nicely cuts my steel column to the needed shape according to the roof slope. I hope this new workflow will improve your work speed and increase efficiency by collaborating with architects who are using ArchiCAD models in their workflows. Okay, so in this video, let's continue with transformation of ArchiCAD model to Revit editable model. Now in this third part, I will show how to directly convert ArchiCAD model into Revit editable model without implementing Advance Steel. So for this step, we will need to modify Revit.INI file. So Revit.INI file looks like this one. You can find it so you can find this file inside Program Data, Autodesk Revit, select version and user data cache, and also user profile, app data, roaming, Autodesk Revit, and dedicated Revit version. More information about Revit.INI file you can find in Autodesk Revit official help. You can go to Customize Revit, the Revit.INI file, and here are all full instructions about how to set Revit.INI file, what kind of functions it provides, and here you can modify and set up each parameter and each component for Revit.INI file. Very powerful configuration tool for deployment purpose in the company, and also for individuals who want to have a preset of their program with all the functions and all other setup things. So now what I need to implement this specific import IFC setting inside Revit.INI file, and I need to put special line import IFC file. Inside here you can see we have 5 different options. By default it seems it's set up for legacy option, and better conversion results can be provided if you select options, which is these ones. So I will show you how it works with this option. So AnyCAD property sets and grids. So geometry property sets and grids are handled via AnyCAD, and all other data is handled via legacy. So it means it's technique how the IFC file is converted. So by default it's used legacy, and AnyCAD I think works similarly like in Advance Steel, and it converts and recognizes objects which are created in IFC file. So let's jump to Revit.INI file, and in here you see I put this in the end of my Revit.INI file. I have different configurations for my program, and I put this parameter here so I can zoom in and show you in larger scale. So after you enter this one, you save Revit.INI file and copy paste it in these locations, in this one and in this one. For basically it should work if you paste in this one, but I found it what sometimes Revit is recreating Revit.INI file, and in most cases it is taking it or making a copy from this location. So the best option is to replace both Revit.INI files in both locations. So now we have this file with all these tested examples. So from first video you can remember we got some issues with openings and my floor was in wrong position and around the soil or terrain objects was not recognized. So now let's try and let's insert a link EFC file. Before linking, it's important part to change the name or to delete Revit files from location from which I am linking EFC file. What Revit is doing, if you link the file, it automatically creates a HTML file, and also it automatically creates EFC.RVT file. If you don't see the ending, you can click View or Options, maybe in View, Show File Name Extensions. So you should activate this one to see extensions of a file. And in this case, it creates new Revit file, which is made from EFC. So if I will now link the same file, it will use this file which was created, and I will get results which was created before my modification. So best option is just to delete both of these files, HTML and RVT files. And now I can go back to Revit and I can select and link the file. Another option, you can just make a copy and rename the file. So now I select design transfer, so it means I want to transfer my design to my program. Reference view is more for visual layout on my main model, or to make EFC clash checks and other things. And design transfer means I want to bring design from another program. Okay, so I select this one. From settings, I set Auto IFC origin to origin. In 26 version of Revit, we have these additional options. EFC can be imported to survey point, or to project base point, or to origin location. So this is very powerful upgrade comparing to older versions of Revit. Very nice modification. So now I will use origin to origin because in my case I have only one building here. I click open. Okay, so we see the model was created. So I can bring this model to a dedicated location, EFC design transfer option, and I can bring it here. So this option works very nice with EFC4, comparing with other techniques. So here I have the file which was transformed, and now let's check how the bind link will work. Will it damage the model, or will it bring all the details and components to my main Revit model? Yes, it seems it break the model and I have the same problem. So binding somehow damages the file. I'm not sure why. So let's try it and open the Revit file which was created by the import linking option. Okay, let's go. And open this file. Okay, so I agree and I would like to unlink it and click OK. Let's click OK on this window also. So from here it seems the model was converted as usual, so direct linking did not create a dedicated file, and all my objects are direct shapes. So it means on linking this option or this technique is not working. So what I need to do now, I need to open the file. So instead of linking, I will use open technique. So now I will delete these two files and now go back in Revit, click File, click Open, click EFC, and from here I will select Design Transfer and click Open. EFC version 4 and above are only partly supported by Open IFC. Consider using Link IFC instead. Okay. But now from the results I see I got the needed result. So it means each element now is editable basic wall, and I have a wall, and I can replace wall with my typical Revit wall, for instance, like this one. And the same I have with the floors, I think. No. So the floor is generic model, edit in place. So walls are converted correctly. The structure columns are also converted, so it means I can replace them with structure columns from my database. Doors, can I replace the doors? Okay, so let's go to 3D view. And here I have all the objects. So this is a site, edit in place, and I have import symbol site. So I have site for furnishing components. So the roof is edit in place, the roof was not recognized, and I have just basic extrusions, so it's better than direct shapes. So it means it's just extrusions, and I have all the layers of my roof. So the geometry is nicely added to my project. Now I see the wall shape is the same I need. So opening element is on the top of my wall. But if I select the wall, so all the walls are correctly recognized, and if I select all elements in entire project, I can replace them with typical Revit wall type. So here I have generic model. Stairs are elements in model in place, and import symbol, and if I fully explode, I have just basic geometry, and I cannot edit it. Floors are also here, as you can see, recognized, and I can replace floors with my native Revit floors, and I can modify the floor shape. I don't know why it didn't recognize this floor. Let's go back in ArchiCAD and let's see what is the difference. So this floor is set. Let's see the classification. So this is a slab. Okay, a slab, and finish is finish floor. Exterior non-load bearing, and this is normal floor. Okay, let's go back in here. So if I select this one, edit, and now I have also the slab. I selected floor. Okay, and it's also structure bearing and load bearing element. So from here it looks like it brings load bearing elements nicely, converting to Revit elements, but if the element is not load bearing, it doesn't convert it inside typical Revit object. Regarding the roof, I have flat roof, shell roof. It would be nice to check if it recognizes load bearing element. It was selected as structure function, but I think I needed to change maybe this option, but I think roof will not be recognized. And the beams are also recognized. So if I go and insert typical framing element, let's say concrete beam and steel beam, and also let's insert some columns. Let's go back and insert structure columns. So concrete column and edge column. Let's use 200. So now I can replace my beam to this one. Okay, can change type of concrete rectangular from line based to non-line based or vice versa. So this one cannot be changed. Okay, let's try to change this one. Okay, I cannot change. And what about the columns? Okay, with the column it works nicely, and I can replace concrete and steel columns. Now this column is edit in place, and it has large void object on the top, and the column is extruded one. So this one is not very nice. Railings edit in place. Walls can be replaced to typical walls, so no problem. Interior walls which are not bearing also can be replaced with typical Revit walls. Here we have doors. Let's insert the doors. And can I replace the doors to this one? Okay, doors works nicely also. I can change the doors. Great. And openings are typical rectangular openings. And what about windows? Insert load family. Window. And let's select basic window. And let's try to replace this window with this one. Yep, it works fine. Let's summarize. So, bearing floors and typical walls are converted to Revit system families, and you can assign Revit walls, and it can save you a lot of time comparing to typical technique of remodeling structure part of model using reference architecture model. So using this technique you practically get all the geometry, walls and floors. Regarding stairs, stairs are just basic model in place element. It can be used for some parts of the project, but later I think it should be converted to different type. Columns also are nicely recognized. If the column is modified or cutted by the roof or by other element, it will be not recognized. So if architects makes cutting part here, so it would be better not to use cutting, and instead of cutting just use a straight column if it's a bearing column, and it will be much better for structural engineers because it will nicely be converted to a needed element. Regarding walls, so if I double click on the wall, so wall is straight, okay, and this object is edit in place. So from here I see a big huge chunk of void element, opening element, which is used to cut the walls. So this technique, it's not so friendly for the Revit, because Revit recommends to avoid in-place modeling elements, but to catch the geometry, it can work quite nice. Now regarding the beams, so the beam is not recognized. Edit family. I can edit it as the family object, but in here it's just simple extrusion, and just simple extrusion. And if I select parameters here, so okay, material, I can change material, and the type, family category is structure framing, shape type is not set. If I change it to rectangle, so the problem is what inside Revit, all framing elements, beams are created as structure analytical object created by line, and the line is converted to this 3D geometry object. And in this case, it's just extrusion. It's not. It doesn't have this line-based component here, and it seems it is an issue comparing to typical components. Let's try to replace this one. And can I change? No. And as usual, Revit help option or error messages doesn't provide any solution. It just announces you it doesn't work like that, and what you can do. So in this case, this geometry object will be need to be replaced by a native family object. So in some project phase, you can use these components, and later if these components should be transformed into analytical programs or other steps of the project, so these elements should be converted and replaced with native Revit family objects. So the side component is, if I fully explode, it disappears. Okay, if I explode particle, no, it also disappears. Yeah, so it's just a big object and doesn't bring all the colors correctly. So the side components are not recognized also. So I will save this transformed file, and now I go back to my original file. So in this case, I think it was a Revit project file. So some components from direct export from ArchiCAD is better because I have side components like separate objects, and I can it's direct shape, so I can just have different element and I can select them. Other components was not converted, so I cannot modify because they are direct shape. And let's try to link Revit file. Okay, I first need to close it. Let's try once more. Okay, it's design transfer and it should be here. Okay, so now let's try to use bind technique and let's see what will happen. Okay, so it means it creates some kind of groups, and these groups are inside here, and if I select yes, it will use, I think, existing groups. Okay, so I click no. I would like to create new group type object, and if I click OK, so all the surrounding objects disappeared, and from here I see all railing objects also disappeared. I have my generic model, I have my floor elements, I have my beam elements, and stairs also disappeared. So the binding technique works quite strange, and we have results which are not very nice. And if I open again the file, and if I select these elements, and okay, so I cannot copy. Okay, survey point I will not use. Site, project base point. No, okay, I can use copy. And if I paste it inside my project, so in this case copy paste it's better option because I have all my components, and so binding technique is not so nice, and it deletes all objects and elements, and then here I have all the components I have here. Okay, so let's conclude all these interesting testing techniques. So first option, if you get IFC files from ArchiCAD, you can transform them inside Revit model using Advance Steel, and you will get editable objects. And using Advance Steel, if you can see here, this column was transformed into structure framing object, and I can modify, and I don't have strange void object on the top of this one, but inside ArchiCAD it was a column. So looking from structural engineering point of view, it's not correct category in here, so maybe it can be modified in Advance Steel. Next option, if you have IFC file, you can use transformation of Revit.INI file, and it can bring the model with recognized system families and recognized other structure framing and structure column objects, and you can edit most of them, and this technique brings more components inside your model. Don't use link, use open, and after opening just use copy paste instead of binding. And if you want to bring all the colors and all other textures that are not converted, but the basic consistent colors and the exact geometry of all the components, so you should request from architects who are modeling in ArchiCAD, so they export the model in this Revit project file type. And BIM managers in BIM execution plan should implement both techniques. So it means EFC files should be also converted in a couple of options. So basically EFC reference for performing all clash control and other things. It can be EFC 4 version. To transfer design elements to another program, architect should provide EFC design transfer model. So these two of EFC files should be provided by architect, and one additional file provided in RVT format. So it means Revit project file should be exported from ArchiCAD. So in BIM execution plan, BIM managers should write it down and provide specific workflows how these files can be exchanged from ArchiCAD to the Revit application. And structural engineers can implement Advanced Steel if they have a lot of steel framing elements in the building. If they have concrete walls, floors, this technique can also be implemented, and these elements will come to the Revit application. Roof is not coming, so to bring the roof and all the cuts of the walls, you should implement Open IFC file, and you will get full geometry of all bearing elements, and you can modify, adapt them specifically for structure models. So I hope these instructions and recommendations will improve your workflows. From my point of view, it can save a lot of time in collaboration of architects and structural engineers and people who are making designs in ArchiCAD and Revit. So this integration can save you a lot of time and of course some resources and so on. Have a nice day and continue modeling, and we will see in the next videos.